So I'm curious to know what you see on your end from new clients coming in, we're ready to work on a new website,
Mhm.
what they're looking for, and what you think they should be, what you think they should be doing.
Right, right. I know. So, what seems to be very common lately is the idea of creating your niche. And so many of our clients come to us saying, I want this website to be my qualifying tool. I want to get rid of all the calls that don't apply to me. I want people to understand exactly who I work with. And I think that's so valuable. I definitely agree with that. I think the concern with that is sometimes they get a little too caught up in that and a little too specific with it, where you're almost ruling out other people, and it almost comes off pretentious in a way where it's like, we only work with 5 million and up and this age range and this thing. And so I think it's a fine balance of sharing that you have a niche, which is so important, of course, but showing it that it's a valuable thing to the client, that it's not just you being picky or specific, but it's actually important to your clients that you have the experience to work with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to my one of my favorite quotes about marketing, which is marketing should be used as a filter, not a magnet.
Yes.
So I think that when somebody can either put out content or create their website so that it is almost a little bit of a vetting process,
Mhm.
it saves them time in the
Yeah,
long run. They're not getting the calls from, other people who aren't a good fit. And
absolutely.
and we'll even sometimes even somebody's got an online scheduler, which I highly recommend.
Yes.
There's so many things you can do with that, where before somebody even makes an appointment, you can ask some questions that doesn't have to be invasive or super personal, but
Mhm.
by using those questions, the person will get the idea of whether or not they're a good fit for
Yeah,
for the advisor too.
right.
So I know I sometimes find that advisors, it's so difficult for them because when they first start out in business, they have to conform so much. And honestly, with compliance and things like that, that's kind of they're kind of told that throughout their careers anyway.
Yeah.
It's very hard for them to think outside the box when it comes to web design.
Mhm.
Ever have somebody come in and just say, "Oh, I want to be totally different," and then you start going down that path and they start getting nervous and they're like, "Oh,
Yes.
fine."
Yes, absolutely. I know, I think it can be so exciting when you get into that planning process and, so many people, the website's been on their mind for so long, they've finally done it, they finally found that partner, they're so excited, they come to us with so many different inspirational websites and ideas, and yeah, they see it on the page and then they think, "Hold on, that's too far, that's too much." And it is a fine balance because, we always want to be clear and straightforward with our websites, but that doesn't mean you can't be creative too. And I think that's what concerns them is this too far? Will people understand it? Do I want to look this way? Do I actually want that that personality, right? And another thing that's interesting is, of course, within the financial space, there's a lot of thought leaders, right? There's a lot of people that everyone knows this person, everyone likes what they do, they follow them, they're inspired by them. And I think that's another concern too. And I won't name names, but we have someone that we did their website for a long time ago, and everybody loves it. And it's almost a 50-50 thing where someone comes to us, wants to start their own website, and they say, I want it to look like his. And that's a hard thing too, because you can't copy people, right? And
Right.
sometimes they get so caught up in, wait, he did it that way though, so why does mine look like this? And it's this hard argument of, well, you need to be you. You need to share your services and your personality and not just copy someone. So that's another interesting side to, I think, this fine balance of standing out, but also not leaning too crazy far out of the industry that you just look, you know, too crazy or too creative or anything, which I think scares them.
It does. It does. And I find too that it's interesting to me when I'm starting to work with a new client and they bring a website to me that they just love. And a lot of times, for example, I do recommend with a lot of clients who, when they say, I want to work with high net worth clients or things like that, I will always tell them, something that always up levels a website is custom branding photos.
Yes. Yes.
That is usually the differentiator. When they bring a website and they're like, I really like this, it's usually because they've got custom photos
Yeah.
on the website. And I have one client who has tons of personality. She's willing to show that in her photos, and it's very attention getting and it's very fun. And it kind of speaks to the potential client that she's hoping to pull in, that she is fun, that she's fun to work with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll have advisors say, oh, I love the overall look and feel of what she's doing. And I'll say, well, she's willing to show her personality.
Yes.
And that's very scary to people.
Yeah.
They don't want to cross that line into unprofessional. But at the same time, we're kind of moving into a different space, I feel like, in advisor marketing, where you do want to look more approachable and
Yeah.
trustworthy, and people are looking for a good overall experience. Is this person going to be enjoyable to work with? This is
Absolutely.
a long-term relationship that I'm going to have. So
Yeah.
and for some people, it does work very well to have a very professional, business-like website, because they're attracting people who really just kind of want to hand over what they've got and not worry about it anymore.
Right.
But there is a trend moving more toward um, almost coaching rather than
Mm-hmm.
just, I'm handing my investments over to you. So that
Right.
require kind of a relationship between the advisor and client.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's something that I talk to a lot of our clients about too is, I mean, I think every advisor knows it, but sometimes it takes that reminder of, look, you're asking people to trust you with a lot of money. And it's not something that you're just going to spend 5 minutes researching and, okay, that guy sounds fine. I'll open an account there. It's so important. And like you said, I think there is that trend of wanting that relationship beyond just handing it over. And of course, there are exceptions, but people want to like you and trust you and relate to you. And, I've also, which is a very pleasant surprise, I've noticed in more of our clients, the idea of we're friends with our clients. We're going to ask them how their day was and be involved in the things outside of their financial life. And I think that's incredible. And the site needs to show that. And I love to, when it's possible, to bring in pictures of the advisor in their office, and it's almost like the candid personal stock photo, right? But it's you, and it shows your face, and you start to establish that side of yourself and that personability, which I think is so important for a website to have. And sometimes they just insist on the nature photos
Right.
and the
Who
standard,
came up with that?
I
I always talk
know.
to the person in the 90s who told every advisor, your website needs to have trees and clouds and
I
mountains.
know. Yeah, I don't know where the tie is to money and to a sailboat on the ocean, but somehow it's there. And yeah, I mean, to steer away from that, I think is so valuable. But then also, as a client of the advisor, I think it's important to see yourself reflected on a website.
Yes.
And so that's where we always recommend the idea of case studies or success stories or something where you can show an ideal persona of who you work with. If you specialize in retirees, show a couple that's around retirement age. Or if you specialize in working professionals, show a younger person in a suit or in an office, and create that through your photography and your design as well, rather than all just, standard stock photos.
Absolutely. And one of the epiphanies I just had recently, I was speaking with a potential client about his website, and we were kind of going through website examples, and I pulled up one that I had done in the past. And this guy works a lot with women.
Mm.
And when I pulled up the website, he goes, oh my gosh, I love that website. It almost looks like a winery, the way the
Oh,
colors
wow.
are and the way the images are. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, that's what we should be looking at for web design, maybe, is not necessarily other advisor websites, but getting into the mind of the ideal client, what they want for retirement or what their goals are as far as like what they want to do for fun. So if it's like eventually I want to golf all day, or if I want to travel, or I want to spend more time with family and friends, um, looking at, high-end golf resort websites or winery websites, looking at what their colors are and their fonts are and what the overall feeling is,
Yeah.
so that maybe when the potential client comes to the advisor website, they don't know necessarily what it is, but they feel like, oh, wow, this is what I want, and possibly this is the person who's going to help me get it.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a great epiphany because yeah, it's something that we I think could even encourage stronger than we do now. But it's the idea that look outside of your industry. We don't have to just look at every other financial advisor within 20 miles of you to see what we need to do with your website. Sure, that helps because we want you to stand out from your competitors, and so it's valuable to see what they're doing. But yeah, look at anywhere else. I mean, any website can be inspirational to you. And we actually just did a site not too long ago for an advisor, and their clients are, a little bit more higher end, a little bit more sophisticated, tech savvy. And if you look at their website, it almost looks like I'm landing on like a tech company.
Mm,
It's not this super financial advisor feel, and I think it works perfectly for them because it's going to be familiar to the visitor. It's not going to be, okay, here's another advisor that I'm clicking on. It's actually going to stand out for them. And yeah, I think that's so important to do, and very valuable, like you said, to look at their lifestyle, their goals, their aspirations, and match your website to that.
yeah, absolutely. And I think too, the thing that advisors can keep in mind is, in this digital age, of course, when you're investing in a website, it is an investment. It's an important investment. I mean,
Hmm.
these days that is a lot of times the first impression you're giving. So you want to make
Yeah,
sure you're giving the right first impression. But it's also important for them to remember, if they're nervous about taking that step into super niching or things like that, that this is digital and this can
yeah,
be changed.
absolutely.
So if you have a great website and it's a really good foundation and you want to test the waters with your content and things like that, and you get 6 months down the line and you're like, this really isn't working for me, that can be changed.
Yeah,
So you have to get out of this mindset that, like, if I make this decision, I have to stick with this for the next 30 years
right.
of my career.
Right.
You don't. And in fact, you
I
shouldn't.
know. I
You should
know.
evolve. Your business will evolve. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I kind of did that myself when I decided to niche to solely work with financial advisors. It was kind of a scary moment for me. And I just
Yeah.
told myself, you know what? Give it 6 months. And if it doesn't work, change it. And I kind of, when I went into that with that mindset, it made me feel a little bit better.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, I think it's such an important thing. Like you said, you're not locked in stone. You're not stuck with this website forever. And we of course we want to get as close as we can to what you're looking for, just so that it is ready. And like you said, it's a big investment, and we want that to be valuable. But yeah, it can change. You can change a sentence so easily. You can swap out a new picture in 30 seconds, and it's a good experiment, and I think it's a good reminder for people if they have any idea, even if it's in the back of their head of maybe my passion is that way, or maybe I would do better with that client. Try it out, see what
Right.
happens. And if you have to go back, you go back and you have that experience. Don't burn bridges, but I think it's great to try out new things and test the waters.
I mean, I will say, I mean, I've been doing this for quite a while now. I have yet to have a client niche and regret it.
Yeah.
I have not had that happen. I've never had anybody say, well, I want to go back to what I was doing before. That
Hmm.
has not happened. And
That's
you're
great.
right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that, if I've got a client who is focusing on single Gen X women, that doesn't mean she doesn't help other people.
Hmm.
But it just, again, it makes the marketing piece of it easier when
Yeah.
you know that. And yeah, like you said, she's not offending other people.
Right.
She's not slamming men all over her website.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. The balance of niching is show your niche. Yes, that's great. And if I'm a 25-year-old professional and I see your website says that you help professionals in their 20s, sign me up, right? But that doesn't mean if I'm 35 and I talk to you in a meeting, you're going to turn me away.
Right.
And I think that's another kind of scary thing to advisors is depending on their size and on their experience, if I niche, am I closing myself off too much? But there's so many people, and as long as you're not getting into the most specific type of person possible, where
Right.
you're limiting yourself, there's so many clients out there, and it just shows your value. And I think people appreciate that you've proven to be experienced in similar situations to them. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go work with a retirement expert. That just doesn't make sense, right? So it goes both ways. There's so many ways to show your experience and to, um, you know, explain to people that you understand them and that you can help them. And if they choose to still work with you, if you're not spot on, I think that's their choice and that's fine.
Right, exactly. And to your point, when we pull up a website or we pull up somebody's marketing, we like to see ourselves
Yes.
there. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that I actually just heard on a podcast, and I don't remember which one, of course, but it was the idea that if you want a niche and you have a few ideas, make different websites. Come up with a name for the financial advisor niche and come up with a name for the tech niche and go for it. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket without compromising the specific capabilities of marketing. You
Right.
can you can have a website where you send advisor clients, you can have a website where you send other people. And that was an epiphany for me too, of like, gosh, that's okay. You don't have to stick to this one overarching company and pick one niche and go all in there. And I think that's a good idea too, especially for those who might be a little bit more hesitant, and want to test the waters and see if they're successful. And maybe by doing that you really dive into one side more than the other and you stick with that moving forward. But I think that's a fine balance and a fine starting point to see what works best for you as a company too.
Oh yeah. And even on a smaller scale, we've done this before where somebody might have kind of a more not quite as niched of a site, but they have secondary pages on their
Mm-hmm.
websites that are specific to certain industries, or
Yeah.
if they do work with tech people or veterinarians or whatever it might be. If you're in an area geographically where you've got a lot of uh, employees of energy companies, or again, the tech industry tends to have different compensation structures
Mm-hmm.
than others. You can always create a secondary page that specifically speaks to those people so that you can detail out how you can help, in that specific industry. And that lets
Yeah.
them know too, like you're an expert here. So you can kind of test the waters in that way too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, it goes back, like I said earlier, the case studies. I will advocate for case studies all day long. I think they're so fantastic. I mean, it benefits everyone. It allows you to show your experience and to actually give someone a story of what it's like and what they can expect from you and the success that you've accomplished. But as a client, again, it's like we said, I want to see myself on the website, and if this is the right advisor for me, I'm going to see myself in one of those case studies. And that's another way. I mean, we've had people with three different case studies that couldn't be more different from each other because of the types of people that they work with. And I think that's okay. And yeah, that is a smaller scale thing to do, and to still show your experience and to meet people where they're at. And yeah, I mean, you can almost use it as a landing page of sorts, right? Where if you
Right.
post on LinkedIn for veterinarians, here's a link to our case study of how we helped a veterinarian last year or anything like that. And I think that's so helpful. And compliance, of course, can limit the case studies a bit, but there's definitely ways, I think, to still go there and just not say, hey, we saved Susan $1 million by doing X, Y, and Z. That's gonna
Right.
that's gonna cause some problems, but you can still share your story in a really valuable way.
Oh, compliance.
Yes, compliance.
Keeping good advisors from marketing.
Yeah, right.
It's a very scary thing.
It is.
Um,
It's tough. Yeah, we've tried to learn compliance and, no, not making promises, not sharing this and that. But of course, at the end of the day, they always have to still go through compliance, even if we think we're spot on. And
Oh
They
yeah,
always seem to get in there and just start redlining.
they find something.
They do. They do.
That's why we have a job though. We have the patience to deal with compliance.
I know. I know.